Thanks for tuning in. If you listened to the last episode, you know that Marie Casteller from Kind North Consulting joined us, and we're so lucky that we actually got 2 episodes out of her visit. So she's back here again to continue the chat about culture and specifically about communicating change and how to preserve or even strengthen and unfortunately sometimes erode culture in the way that you do communicate change. So the third voice you're hearing this week, that's Marie back. Please give her a follow on LinkedIn. We'll put her contact info in the show notes. Hope you enjoyed this episode.
If we have a culture of change, if we have a culture of innovation, that doesn't mean everyone just has to say yes, thumbs up to everything, rah, rah, rah. It means we should be able to answer the tough questions.
Nothing makes someone who is about to have to do a whole bunch of work more annoyed than telling them something like, this shouldn't take you long, or this shouldn't be hard.
Yes.
You come near me and I'm like, hi, welcome to Target. What are you looking for? Oh my God, blue duvet cover? We have those. Let me show you. That's... I'm running.
What are we actually trying to achieve? If I take the Target example and not really knowing a lot about their strategy, are they trying to achieve connection with their customers? Then say that. It does not have to be, as soon as somebody is like as close to you as this, you need to do A, B, and C. You're telling somebody how to act. We should never be doing that. Nobody needs that in their lives anywhere.
I'm so curious to know because it sounded like culture was winning, surviving, thriving to the DO level, right? There was trust, there was vulnerability, candor. What do you think happened? Why did that culture drop or change when it went from there to store?
You don't have to love it. How do you leave your office and go, there is a change, this is what it is, and not actually be the person who's ruining the culture because of the way you're communicating the change?
I'll never forget, Matt. I feel like it was maybe our first podcast or something when you were talking about the rollout of an app or something like that and all the comms you get. And I was like, well, I think corporate is excited. I was like, they are really excited for this thing. And you were like, yeah, we can tell them the verbiage when corporate is excited. I think about that all the time. And because that is the default position of a lot of corporate leaders that I talk to or that I work with is like, we need to tell them how great this is. We need to tell them like they need to know how much we're doing for this or that. And like, it's really awesome. So we should tell them that. I'm like, I don't think you're going to get the lean in, the buy-in. Like, it's like trying to skip, if you've ever heard about the law of diffusion of innovations, it's like trying to go from like a laggard right to the like promoters.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But real talk, your passives might be slightly inspired by your promoters, and your detractors might be slightly more inspired to follow the passives if they start to catch on. But you're not going to cheerlead detractors or non-believers into
You're
becoming
not going to
believers.
convince me right now, 2025, that AI is important. So it's the perfect example because right now everyone's cheerleading it. No one's asking the hard questions about or no one with a voice is asking the hard questions.
Right.
About what it means or what we should really be using it for or how it could actually be helpful without being just a big sloppy mess. Everyone's just like, it's the thing. And I'm like, the more you scream it's the thing, the more I'm like, I have a lot of questions. And so, but that's how corporate does feel a lot of times. And I think back to this moment of again, Old Navy, I got an invite, I think I've mentioned this on the call, to a district manager conference call. It was accidentally sent to some store managers. And then we were told to ignore it, in which case I was like, I will be joining this call, but from a different number, so no one knows who's on the call. And I listened, and I was so intrigued, upset. There was a lot of emotions happening because we had a store manager call. I don't even remember what the change was, but there was like an announcement about a change. And the store manager call was like, we got this. We can do it. Yay. Go team, go. And then I got on the DM call and it was like, we realized that this is a really like hard change to roll out. And blah, 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 blah. It was just like really brutally honest. There was even some verbiage in there from the VP of stores that was like, I didn't love it when I first heard that this is like kind of what we were doing. And I was like, why was this not communicated like this to us? The way you would have gotten so much more buy-in if you had just said this, because we would have been like, oh, you're unsure too? Cool. I'm going to feel unsure for a minute. But instead, when you give us this like rah rah speech, I think a lot of people, and I've had this conversation with many ASMs of mine who want to become store leaders. People know what your personality is and will buy into you as a leader as long as your leadership matches your personality. So, in the example I always use is if I come in and I'm like, LY, we made 6,000 and our goal is 75 and we're going to do it. Go team. My team would be like, Matt, we're going to call a number and have you committed. Because have never been like a rah-rah leader. It's just not my thing. I lead with like a lot of dry humor, sarcasm, um, blunt honesty, etc. But I've met leaders who really are rah-rah, right? Like I've met that's like their default. And you buy it when they're selling it to you because you're like, oh, this is like who you are. This is like the vibe. Um, and so I think people really start to go back to trust, really trust you when what you're saying matches what they know to be true about you. And I think that that's also true though for a corporate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry to go ahead, Marie.
No, I was gonna say, like, I'm smiling because I think been on both sides of it, being like the rah rah, like this is amazing, aren't we all so excited? And then being on the side of like, okay, like this is gonna be hard, and just being a little more authentic in what's happening. Um, and I love that example of the VP saying, yeah, like I wasn't sure about this either. Or being honest to say, like, hey, this is coming. You've been waiting for it and it's not perfect. And I think in the speed of retail too, when things are happening fast, but yet not fast enough for the stores most of the time, especially in really large organizations, having that authenticity and that honesty about, here's what's coming. It's a big change. We need to all get behind it, and we need to be able to like address concerns in a super honest way, because if we have a culture of change, if we have a culture of like refreshing or innovation, that doesn't mean everyone just has to say yes, thumbs up to everything and like we're good to go and rah rah rah. It means we should be able to answer the tough questions and again connect it back to our why, connect it back to like what is important to us and why we need to prioritize this for our company and for our customers at the end of the day. So we have to storytell both, like, of course, all the positives. Things aren't getting rolled out because,
This is gonna make
we
things
want to like
worse.
create more work. Like, let's just do this. But it's really kind of giving that dotted line between, all the way from our strategy, our retail strategy to, what it means for the person on the floor and being really honest about that.
I think a lot of times too, corporate teams don't want to, besides like the vulnerable piece, like like explain why something isn't ready or think that store leaders can't grasp the concepts of why something is so hard. And in an effort to like oversimplify, they're just like, well, we'll just not explain. And then whenever it's like fully ready to launch, that's when we'll tell them. And I think that really does a disservice because here's the thing, even if someone doesn't fully understand, they're like, I don't know what they're talking about, payroll algorithms and stuff like that. You give yourself so much more credibility because even the person who quite frankly isn't bright enough to get all the details is at least going to know, well, they don't have it ready yet because I don't know, something with computers. I don't really understand. But they'll let us know when it's ready. It's like you give so much credibility to yourselves as corporate teams. And then again, that's more trust. And because I've seen it so many times where I've asked a question that I feel like no one's asking, or at least I haven't heard someone ask. And then I get a real answer. Starbucks being an example. I was there. Their mobile system still leaves a lot to be desired in terms of just allowing customers to just order as much as they want whenever they want with no tethering or like good enough real-time feedback about what wait times will be, because 70 people can order in the same 90 seconds. And then obviously you're all not waiting 4 to 7 minutes because that's impossible. And so I remember being in training and they did this like new leaders with the director of the region call. And I was like, ooh, I'm new. He doesn't know me. I can be a little bit unhinged because I'm just going to ask like I do always when I want to ask a hard question. I kind of act like I'm stupid. And that takes them off the defense. And so instead of being like, so why doesn't it have accurate wait times? I was like, so does it tell the thing? I just asked in a way that made it seem like I just like don't understand how anything works. Because I find that will get me a truthful answer. And the director then said to me, so we've actually tried to fix it in 3 markets. We've run tests and it's in 2 of those markets it made it worse. And in the other market, we're still tinkering because now it's an issue where like people's food is being done 20 minutes before their drink. And then your food's cold, but your drink's hot. Like, he's like, so there's still a lot of tinkering that has to happen before we can really like roll out something that's going to make customers really happy and employees satisfied. And I said, this is probably the moment he was like, oh boy, I was led into a trap. I was like, yeah, so 2 different managers have trained me and they both seem really negative about why this is happening and seem to think that Starbucks just doesn't care. So I think communicating that we've tried and failed would be better than not communicating. But that's just me saying that as someone in training. And I think back to that moment a lot because I remember coming back to my training store and telling the person training me this, and he was like, he said that? And I'm like, yeah, he said they tested it here. And I was telling him, and he was like, almost mad that I, as a trainee, knew more than he did. So that's like a whole other issue. But it really goes to show you, though, that if they had just been like, yeah, we've tried a million times, and this is just a really complex problem to solve, people would be like, okay, great, but it's a problem. Like, you're admitting that this is not the ideal.
Yeah. So going back to the communications, like the rollout stuff, of course, like talk about the perks of the thing that you're rolling out, the changes that are happening, but also acknowledge that it's going to be hard and it's a big lift for the store manager. I always feel like that's missing a lot. And in fact, they maybe try to do the opposite, right? Like, we've simplified this for you. We've documented all you have to do is on this list, right? It's a rollout in a box kind of thing. Don't worry, it's going to be simple. Nothing makes someone more annoyed. Nothing makes someone who is about to have to do a whole bunch of work more annoyed than telling them something like, this shouldn't take you long, or this shouldn't be hard. Like, if you really want to infuriate, man, especially a graphic designer, ask them to create something and tell them it shouldn't take them long. Can I go back to the story about you sneaking on that DM call?
Mm-hmm.
I'm so curious to know because it sounded like culture was winning, surviving, thriving to the DO level, right? There was trust, there was vulnerability, candor. Why? What do you think happened? Why did that culture drop or change when it went from there to store?
So I think it was at that point the DM's choice how they wanted to communicate the change. And every DM probably took a different road. And to be honest, although the culture in Old Navy was great at that time, how do I phrase this carefully? My district had a lot of challenges at that current moment. Like we had some store manager turnover. There were a couple of stores in the district that continued to be like a hot mess that a lot of us would have to support to help. And I think our DM just didn't want to add to that. And I think wanted to be like, nothing to see here, folks. Everything's good. There's no more bad news coming. And I don't think that was the correct choice in that moment. But I do understand why the choice was made, like looking at the big picture and kind of zooming out. I mean, that's one of the things about especially us having this podcast. It's kind of like forced me to do like a reflective on everything that I haven't liked in my career and be like, okay, but why did this happen? And like, why was this choice made? And was there a good reason? And I think that DM at that moment made a choice that she felt was the right choice for morale in that moment. And I can't really say whether it was the right or wrong choice. I don't know that other store managers didn't join the DM call, so they didn't hear the difference. So I don't think it
Right.
mattered as much to them. But to me, I was definitely like, why didn't you just say this? Um, but yeah, so I think that that was what the breakdown was.
That's so interesting too. Like I'm just thinking of, of your DM, and it's a great reflection. They're trying to make sure to make your job easier, just like you're trying to make your team's job easier, right? So, yeah, was it the right or wrong choice? It's hard to know. But for you as a leader, as an individual, it probably wasn't. You needed a little bit more context and a little bit more of that authentic openness about what was happening. But, I think I can totally relate to that of just being in that place of having to make some of those decisions sometimes of how much do I want to share? Because you don't want to make it overly complex either by
Hmm.
sharing all of the like pain or, all of the failures that have happened along the way to get here. You don't want to burden anybody with that from a corporate sense. And I think when you're especially talking on scale about like large retailers with, it could be, hundreds of store managers, you need to get really simple in your communications and authentic at the same time. And how hard is that to do sometimes? And I think that's where sometimes we take the easy path of like, okay, we'll just do rah, like really positive.
Hmm.
Or no, we don't want to actually bring everyone down the rabbit hole that we've been in for like 3 years. That's not fair to everyone. And so what message for which set of leaders? I think it's a real balance to figure that out.
I think that's where, for me, where like more a personalized approach would help. Like, I wish that DMs were actually more empowered to deliver, like, rather than it coming directly from corporate. Like, maybe corporate has something that the DM then gives us after their conversation, like the official memo, whatever the change is. But I wish DMs were more empowered to deliver it directly because one, it would seem a little bit more personal, but also DMs know their store leaders better than corporate. And again, you might have different, it's one thing if you have all high performers, that DM has been in that role in that district for a decade. It's kind of like a well oiled machine. I would argue that team can probably handle a lot more truth and transparency than the team that has a brand new DM. Half the store managers are new. The stores are kind of all in a place of flux and like have had high turnover and they're trying to fix those problems. That district probably needs a little bit more rah rah and can't handle any more truth. They have enough truth facing them every day when they walk in their store. And so that's kind of my wish for retail in general is that not everything has to come directly from the top, like allowing area leaders to really assess what their teams are capable of hearing in that moment.
Yeah, I just want to call out one really seemingly innocent, but really common thing that I think erodes psychological safety, and it's not malicious at all. It's just when everyone's busy. If you've ever had a boss who is just constantly talking about how in the weeds they are and how hectic everything is, you're never going to go to them
Hmm.
with a concern or an idea even because you're just like, this isn't the time. Like, obviously, they're overwhelmed. They can't handle it. And I wonder if some of that might be happening with like DMs. They know stores are really busy and working with skeleton crews and getting slammed with all kinds of promotions and initiatives and things like that. So I wonder if they think that you prefer it
Hmm.
to get the light the light version. It's not even really the Coles notes because they're not including like the context. It's not like they're keeping it concise. It's just they're leaving out a whole bunch of stuff that it sounds like, at least for some of you, might actually get them more buy-in.
I mean, some of the best communication personally in my career and others' career, because I heard from friends and, who work in retail, happened during COVID because everyone was vulnerable and didn't know what was happening. And so it required, like, no leader could be like, and we completely know what's going to happen and everything's fine. Don't panic. I mean, I could do without all of the words unprecedented. I'm done with that word. I think we should just cut that word out of all communications, political, corporate, whatever. Journalism, just get rid of that word. Find a new word. But anyway, and also in America, when we had a lot of protests because of George Floyd's murder, a lot of companies like leaned into that moment and again had to reflect and be honest and vulnerable and real in a way that I've never seen in my career. And it was all like back to back. So it was like kind of a wild moment. I was like, oh my God, is this the way forward? Spoiler alert, go back to the COVID episode. It's not. We forgot everything we learned. But I do think if companies were really reflective, they could use that moment to think about, we didn't know what was going to happen. We had to communicate a level of uncertainty. And the companies that did it well really bought themselves a lot of trust. Because teams were like, oh my God, we're all unsure. We all have no idea what's happening. And yet we have to move forward in some way together. And it's the together part. To Marie, you've said that, Marie, a couple of different times. Like, it's like the language I'm picking up on. And so it's not like it's unprecedented that companies have had to have moments of vulnerability and that it's worked.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. Okay, so if I could start to kind of summarize and wrap up, and please jump in at any point, the themes I'm picking up for teams that have a great culture and the things that need to be protected, right? So culture is a lagging indicator of having safety, right? Psychological safety. Strong cultures have a sense of belonging. People need to feel accepted and included, which will enable them to communicate openly, take risks, and collaborate. And those small signals matter more than big culture launches or values on the wall type things. The next theme we talked about was vulnerability. Vulnerability creates trust, not the other way around. Admitting uncertainty invites buy-in and more collaboration. So open feedback, share challenges, model imperfection. And then the last one that I'm kind of picking up on is purpose. So establish a purpose. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the company purpose, but why are we doing this? What are we all doing here together? Is that clear? It sounds like the great cultures have clarity about what they're doing and why it matters, right? On the macro and more micro level. So essentially, the safety gets people connected, the vulnerability builds trust and cooperation, and then the purpose aligns effort and drives performance. And that creates a reinforcing loop.
Yeah. And the one thing I might add on that you're making me think of with, we're all aligned to the same purpose, but we're also calling out along the way, not just the things that are like conflicting with our culture, but like we're acknowledging people when they're really, living into the culture in a way that helps us to get where we are, or helps us move towards our goals. So really, making it so natural, I think, in terms of how we give feedback or just share acknowledgement of each other, that it becomes natural. We just kind of, it's not only that we feel it, but we know what it looks to live it every single day.
Can I ask a quick follow up then, based on that, around the idea of culture fit? Because it used to be a term that a lot of people used a lot, and then people got away from it because it sounded like, oh, well, you're not interested in growing then, right? Like you don't want someone who's going to challenge you. But then on top of that, this we're hearing, at least I've seen more on LinkedIn, a lot of like old school retail leaders talking about the importance of things like training eye contact, like training smiling, training at, greet someone at this. And Matt just died. If you're listening and not watching, Matt literally just died inside and outside. Like all the things we're talking about, can you train those? Like if you try to train them, if you get compliance over commitment, aren't they kind of creepy?
Aren't they creepy?
Like I can tell when
I'm
someone
calling out, like, hey Matt, you made really good eye contact with that customer.
Well, I remember the first time I read in a real employee store handbook, make contact once someone is within 10 feet of you.
Oh,
I
you mean Target's whole new business plan?
exactly.
I just need to say this on the podcast. I can be banned from ever working anywhere that's related. But whatever corporate team came up with that, it's time to retire, move to Costa Rica, pack it in. You have nothing of value to add anymore at all.
Yeah.
And I don't even think this question was directed at me, but I just feel so strongly. But partially because I really think that customers, and I think this is what you were trying to say, Becky, like customers also know it's fake.
Yes.
Like you come near me and I'm like, hi, welcome to Target. What are you looking for? Oh my God, blue duvet cover? We have those. Let me show you. I'm running from everywhere. I'm running. I'm buying my duvet cover on Amazon. I'm having it delivered. Amazon is not going to try to stare at me like that. And as someone who is in client service and has worked both like value brands, but also high end, customer service needs to match your customer, but it also, and this is my biggest hot take, and I've gotten pushback from corporate and retail leaders for this, it actually needs to match the employee. Because again, to go to authenticity, like if you have an employee that's like bubbly and kind of weird and like she's the freak of the store, or he's the freak of the store, it doesn't even matter what their gender is, like let them be a freak with customers because it's going to come across as genuine. Like they're nerdy and they're excited about the product and like they're going to be excited about blue duvet covers, like very genuinely, because that's what they love. If you have the employee who's quieter and a little bit more shy, I don't think that person doesn't belong in customer service. I think you need to figure out how to make their personality their brand of customer service. And so actually Target is doing the complete opposite of what they need to be doing to get people to walk into their stores. They talk about brands that have learned nothing. And just so we're so for real, I used to work at Target over a decade ago. Do I have slightly a vendetta? Yes. Mostly because we'll get to that in another podcast episode. But anyway, I think they're doing the complete opposite in the moment of like what. Because do you think that's going to create good culture? If now you have, at that point, let the AI take over. Just put robots in the aisle. And then the robots will detect someone 10 feet away and they will turn and they will be like, welcome to Target. You are currently in aisle 2A. What can I help you find today? Like, if that's what you want, just get the robots now. Call it a day. Let those people free. Let them go work somewhere that's better than wearing a red shirt and khakis. I digress.
No, I needed the demo. That now I see what creepy is.
Yes.
But it makes me go back to what we were talking about earlier too, of like, what are we actually trying to achieve? And if I take the Target example and not really knowing a lot about their strategy, like, are they trying to achieve like connection with their customers? Then say that, like, that's what we're trying to achieve. And then Matt, like, exactly, let your people, how they do it. If I'm more of an introvert, Like that's going to look different than if I'm a little bit wacky and crazy on the floor. But at the end of the day, I'm connecting with a customer. I'm getting curious about what they're looking for or why they're there. And I'm offering to help them. And I think that's where, from a corporate side, it does not have to be, yeah, as soon as somebody is like as close to you as this, you need to do A, B, and C. You're telling somebody how to act, and we should never be doing that. Why? Like, nobody needs that in their lives anywhere. But actually saying, like, what are we trying to achieve? Like, what do we want our customers to feel? What do we want to feel? I think that's where we kind of come back into culture and values and how that all connects.
Yeah, it really is taking, and it's very similar to the backcheck policy, I think. So we say all the time, we use the term operationalizing your values. So maybe this would be a good task for AI, Matt. Take your whole detailed, comprehensive policy thing, put it in AI, tell them what your values are, and ask it, do you see any potential contradictions between what we're telling our employees the rules are and what we're asking them to do and what we're saying our values are? And I guarantee you there's going to be something like people first or trust or innovation and hopefully AI. You don't have to use AI, guys. You can just do this yourselves. But we'll tell you all the ways in which you are quietly, indirectly saying, we don't trust you. We don't think you can do this your own way. We don't believe that you can handle this without these very prescriptive instructions. So I would say that, yeah, that falls back into the trust thing and being clear on yeah, why are we doing this, right? To your point, Marie. And don't skip the steps. You can't leapfrog authenticity. Customers know, employees know, it feels terrible for everyone. All right, team. Any final thoughts?
I think mine would just be like from a corporate point of view, you know, culture is most alive in the stores. And if the culture is not alive there, I think that's a big indicator of something that needs to be addressed. And, you know, when we talk about turnover right now in retail is, you know, exponentially higher than it has been. And then the people who are in retail still say like, they stay for the people. And what they're really saying is I stay for culture. So how do we get more, intentional about culture and creating the conditions for culture? Because I think that's good business. That's operational excellence right there when you're able to, you know, empower people to do what they do best.
Marie will speak to corporate and I will speak to stores. Which is, I think it's also important for the retail leaders listening that it's inevitable that the corporate team or your DM or someone is going to tell you something that is a new initiative or something you have to do that is going to not ruin culture, but affect culture in some way negatively. And I think it's our job. My first DM I ever had gave me the best advice. I still think about it often. I still give it to other people, which is she said, when you read something from corporate that you really hate, don't leave your office until you can figure out a way to communicate it in a way that you don't hate. You don't have to love it. But how do you leave your office and go, there is a change, this is what it is, and not be the person who's ruining the culture because of the way you're communicating the change. And so I think that that's really our job as leaders as well, is how am I going to leave the office and communicate this change to my team in a way that doesn't make everyone go, damn it. I knew they were going to do something like this. How do you communicate it? And you know what? That might take you 48 hours. You might need to leave for the day and fake it to your team and pretend that nothing is changing until you can figure out a way to communicate it in a way that keeps your culture great, in the way that I hope that you all have made it.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect place to leave it. Thank you, as always, Matt. And thank you so much, Marie.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was really fun.
You're listening to Dear Corporate, Love Stores.